All right, I want to welcome everybody to the History of Aviation podcast after a little slight hiatus, but we are definitely back. My name is Derrick Beeler, and always I'm joined by Mr. David Rowe and Dave Gorman. How you guys doing? Starting with you, David Rowe.
Oh, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Just a lot of rain and bad weather here lately, so not a lot of spotting going on. But on the good side, I've got my daughter home from college for Christmas break, and my son comes home this weekend. So we'll have a full house, and it'll start getting exciting around here very soon.
How about you, Dave?
Yeah, doing really well. We're coming into the home stretch right before our winter holiday break. So the kids are a little anxious about all that. Some of the teachers might be as well. Things are going pretty well. We sure hated all that rain. It really got in the way of us being able to do some outside things at school, of course. The kids have been squirrely, but the sunshine was nice today. We'll take it. Things are good, though.
Very good. That's great to hear, guys. Great to see you guys again and jump into this thing right quick. Today is a big one because it's a big one around Knoxville, East Tennessee area. We're talking about the KC-135. I'm going to turn you guys loose, starting with you, Dave Gorman.
Well, once again, yeah, as you say, the skies over East Tennessee, it seems like there's always a 135 or two up in the air. And lately, sometimes we get lucky. We get some variants of this airframe, which has some long legs. It's been around for 60 years or so. And I find it fascinating how many different varieties of this family aircraft are still in use. Some have been retired, some have passed through and are in storage, or no longer a mission that exists anymore. But it's a beautiful, beautiful aircraft and just great to see. So looking forward to hearing what we come up with on this one.
Yeah, exactly. It is a regular visitor over the Tri-Cities. We've got a couple of refueling routes that run right by. I'm in Bristol, Tennessee, and there's one that runs from up in Southwest Virginia, right down into the Tri-Cities, and then they turn around and they go right back up into Southwest Virginia. So I get them to the left of me, I get them to the right of me, at least a couple of times a week, and depending on weather. You never know what you're going to see them. I've seen them with J-Stars, C-17s, and C-5 Galaxies. And it's always a treat when you see them coming, you get out there and you start shooting some pictures and see what they're pulling along with them.
I can remember the first time I ever saw an air-to-air refueling live. And I had gone back to school to become a teacher. I was walking on campus at the University of Tennessee in the year 2000. And for some reason, I looked up. I didn't hear it. It was probably at 15,000 feet or something over Knoxville. And I looked up and just saw this, the outline of the 135. And it was refueling something that was in similar size. So it might have been a Joint Stars or something like that. But I couldn't believe it, that I could actually see it from the ground. It was kind of a surprise to me, because there was no tracking hardware that I was aware of that you could, websites, anything like that you could actually follow those things. And I was amazed that you could see it. And of course, now it's something that such a regular thing to see, and we know when it's coming, and we can quickly and easily figure out what it is that they're refueling. It's always fun. But it was so cool to be able to see that from the ground. And now we've got, the ability to reach out and get close with big lenses, and they put on quite a show for us.
Well, no doubt. And and because they're based in Knoxville with the 134th Air Refueling Wing, if you're out at the airport, you'll watch them doing touch and goes and can get up close and see and hear them. And they're very impressive for a really old bird. They put on a good show. They circle around and fly right over your head. And as a matter of fact, at one time I was at McGee Tyson, and one comes screaming in and banked really hard. And I've got photos of vapor coming off the top wing of a KC-135, just like a fighter plane. It was amazing to see, it pulled so hard it could pull vapor out of the air.
You got to believe that the crew on that plane were feeling good about that too. And my gosh, I hope they saw your video or your pictures of it, because they were like, yes, that's us.
As a matter of fact, one of the people on the plane contacted me a few days after I posted the picture and said, "Hey, I was on that flight. Can you send me the picture?" So yes, they did see the pictures.
Pulling vapor on a 135. Who'd have thunk it?
Not me, that's for sure, because I'm taking the pictures and I'm like, is that what I'm seeing? And so look up on the little screen on your camera and you're like, well, dang, there is actual vapor on that. So yeah, kind of a neat thing for a 4-engine big heavy to do in front of you.
Absolutely. Well, and we've got the National Guard here at McGee Tyson that operates these aircraft, and some of those are there are 135s that are active Air Force, and then 135s that are in the Guard service, and we're lucky in that we see visitors that come through from other bases as well. And I know that there's a pretty active group of folks locally trying to get pictures of aircraft coming from Grissom or coming out of New York or, faraway bases that stop in and do their training and spend some time with us. So.
Yeah, it's really neat to, they attract that kind of attention. So yeah, there's, about 300 and what I see, about 400 active duty and about 250 National Guard. So there's a lot of KC-135s that, after 65 years, they're still out there. They outnumber any other refueling plane by a lot. And so you figure, they've been around 65 years. How much longer can they go? 2030, 2040 is the projected life of these birds, and they're still working hard every day.
That's going to put them close to 80 years of service for that airframe.
Exactly. Yeah. From a 1950s design, and it's still the main workhorse of the refueling air refueling.
And of course, they've updated avionics and the engine. That was a big change when they added these newer, bigger engines on them. Range obviously is typically not a problem when you're a refueling aircraft, but they've participated in missions around the globe, and it feels good to know that these professional airmen are up there pumping the gas and keeping the missions going and taking care of business round the clock.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. They're on alert all the time because there's aircraft in the air all the time. And as long as there's aircraft flying, they're going to need gas because, the Air Force needs an unlimited reach to get everywhere in the world. And the tanker is the platform that allows them to do that. You were talking about the engines. They started out with these Pratt & Whitney turbojets, and, that was typical of the 1950s. And these things are loud, they're smoky, they burn a lot of fuel. And so in the 80s, they switched over to these GE high bypass turbofans, and they went 25% more fuel efficient. They could offload 50% more fuel because they were so fuel efficient. They weren't burning their own fuel, so they could give it away to the receivers. And the bigger thing is they're 96% quieter than those old turbojets. So when they take off, they're a whisper compared to what they started out.
Seems kind of hard to believe, but I don't guess there are any of the old engined aircraft that are still plying their trade anymore, because for all those reasons you just suggested. But one of the things I enjoy about being this close to our wing out here at McGee Tyson is these aircraft have obviously different call signs and everything like that, but many of them have their own nose art, and it's really cool to see the variety of pictures on the Tennessee Air Show's Facebook page that people are getting of the nose art. One of the most popular ones, of course, honors East Tennessee icon Dolly Parton. And,
exactly.
It's people get thrilled when they get a good shot of Dolly coming in.
Well, they even advertised that Smoky Mountain Air Show you had last year. That was on the nose of one of those 135s for a while to promote the air show. So, I mean, it's got multiple uses.
It's an impressive aircraft. And And it replaced the KC-97 that we had here in Knoxville. That way before my time. Some of our listeners I know have seen and can remember seeing the 97s when they were active out here. But the big 4-prop refueler could barely get it going fast enough to refuel some of the fast movers in the Air Force inventory. So it's, writing was on the wall, of course. And I think they left us. Were they still flying the 97s locally into the 70s, Dave?
I don't believe they were. I think they got rid of those in the 60s.
Yeah. But, it's funny because I'm sure there was a time when they thought that the 135s are going to pass through. And there are other aircraft that have come on since the 135 that do that job and other mission parameters and everything like that. But there's no sign of us not needing the 135. It fills an important role.
Exactly. The other aircraft, the KC-46 Pegasus and the KC-10 Extender, they've literally only built about 60 frames of both of those. So that's only about 120 compared to the 500, 700 KC-135s that have been out there. So, without the 135s, the Air Force doesn't move around the way they want to. And the next, what's coming in the future, these KC-Y and KC-Z planned, clean sheet versions are in the works, but they're not coming anytime soon. And that's another reason why, we're going to see this 135 flying into the 2040s, possibly later if they don't get something on the started building soon.
Well, I'm going to brag a little bit here. I have actually had a flight on a KC-135 out of McGee Tyson. It was an in-service I took years ago through University of Tennessee and aerospace course that they had through the local wing of the Civil Air Patrol. And part of the training, this was for educators who might use aviation in their classrooms. Part of our classroom experience was a orientation flight on a 135. I didn't care what they called it. Okay, I was going to fly in a 135, and so I got to do that. And earlier classes had flown a 135 down to the to Kennedy Space Center, landed on the shuttle runway. Other groups had flown off the coast of Florida and refueled F-22s. I would have been okay with any of those things, but frankly, it didn't matter what we got to do. We ended up flying a refueling track up over Norris Lake and over Anderson County, and refueled a E8, the Joint Stars. One came up out of Georgia and joined up with us, and they practiced their hookups and releases. And of course, we were flying a race course track for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or something like that. And to see an aircraft just as big as you come in that tight is a real testament to the professionalism of the air crews, of course. I was freaking out. I was filming it, and we got to go back where the boom operator was and watch that whole process. And they were just total pros. But I mean, you could look right down through his window and easily see the crew of the Joint Stars coming in and hooking up and pulling back and dropping back maybe, I don't know, quarter mile or something, and then coming back in. It was quite a thrill. So that was kind of neat because that was about 10 years after I first saw a hookup looking up over my head at the University of Tennessee, and then I actually got to see it from inside the plane. Quite a treat.
Oh yeah, great memories right there. So the boom operator, he's laying down in the floor. Is that correct?
He absolutely is. He has a kind of a mesh hammock type of thing that, if I remember correctly, and joystick that he was controlling it with, if I remember. The whole thing was just, I'm taking it all in and watching that. But we also were able to go up to the flight station up in the cockpit and watch that and see the settings that they locked in basically on autopilot, yes, with the racetrack route that they were running and everything. But the boom guy was laying down back there. I think nowadays in some of the more recent, the Pegasus and probably the KC-10 refueler. I think they're sitting upright and they've got, a little bit more, maybe a more manageable posture that they're in when they're refueling. But the 135 has the guy laying down in the back.
Yeah, it's amazing that plane only requires 3 people to do its job: pilot, co-pilot, and the boom operator.
Well, I kept offering to do something, and they said, "Go away." So
go take some more pictures.
Let me do anything. I did plenty of that, and our friend Bruce Kawakami he teases me about some of my other experiences and says, "Well, unless there are pictures, it didn't happen." And this one, I had pictures and videos. So there, take that, Bruce.
That definitely sounds like a fun. I would love to do that.
It's quite a thrill, and I would love to figure out how to make that happen again.
Well, when you do, you let us know, and we'll be standing in line with you.
I'll tag you in the pictures. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that'll work too.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Not quite.
One of the interesting things about the boom, you were talking about them, hooking up and unhooking, is that boom operator is actually flying the boom. The boom of the KC-135 has a pair of V-tailed wings. And so he literally flies it in to the receiving aircraft and makes the hookup, which is pretty amazing. So, it's kind of like a video game. You get that joystick out and you start going left, right, up, and down and make the hookup. The boom itself is like 12 feet long, and it extends out. It weighs like 800 pounds. So it's not a small, thin, piece of machinery. It's pretty heavy. And it's got a 5-inch diameter hole in it to transfer the fuel. It can do 1,000 gallons of fuel a minute. And to do it like an F-16, it takes 5 minutes to refuel an F-16, and then it's on its way. And obviously the J-Stars or any of the larger aircraft, C-17s, it would take much longer because they have much larger tanks. But I mean, it can refuel 1,000 gallons a minute. That's a lot of fuel transferring from plane to plane. And as a matter of fact, speaking of the fuel on the tanker, the 135 has 10 tanks. It has 3 in each wing, 3 in the lower deck, and 1 in the upper deck near the tail. So it is literally from end to end filled with fuel.
Does its job and does it well. Thank goodness it's up there. One of the variants that I thought was so interesting was the SR-71, which had that special fuel, the high flashpoint fuel and everything. And they had a version of the 135 that carried just their fuel because obviously it was special. It was they didn't want to get it mixed up with, nobody else could come up and refuel off of it or anything. I forget the model number of the 135 that
it's a Q model.
The Q. Okay.
Yeah, it was the Q, and it's JP7 fuel, I believe, is what I read. Goodness. So yeah, it was specially just for them, and I think they've been remodified back to the standard R now. Since the 71's been retired. So, yeah, that would have been a special job, though, to see a SR-71 pulling up behind.
The 135 also has some passenger carrying capabilities, correct?
Yeah, it sure does. The upper deck, it is open, and that's another thing. KC, K is for fuel, C is for cargo. So KC-135. At the upper deck is for cargo carrying capabilities. It can carry about 80 passengers at a time. And I'm trying to remember exactly how much capacity. I can't recall off the top of my head now. But anyway, yes, it's a cargo carrying. It does long haul. One of the things I read is when it's refueling, it can fly for about 1,500 miles with about 150,000 pounds of fuel to transfer to aircraft. If it's just doing a transit, flying from place to place, it can fly almost 11,000 miles. just using the internal fuel. So yes, it can fly a long way on all that fuel carrying cargo all around the world.
Very long legs. I know we have some friends locally, and one of our friends serves with the local unit, and Brandon traveled to Guam in the summertime and flew out there in a 135. And unfortunately, fortunately for our country, but unfortunately for him, he was there during the air show, so he was not able to see our local air show. He was out on Guam serving his country, but they flew out there in a 135, and when they came back, I saw some pictures. Quite a celebration when they returned. It's probably not like airline food and all the comfort of commercial aircraft, but it gets you there and gets you back. So,
correct. Yeah, it's not a passenger jet. It's not for comfort. It's for service. And but yes, there's seats inside. Matter of fact, I walked around in one KC-135 at Thunder over Michigan this year, and it's a lot of room up there, a lot of space to put people in, and I think it's about 80,000 pounds of cargo that it can carry. So not a small amount, but it's quite capable of carrying the cargo and refueling at the same time. So.
Are there any other countries that fly the 135?
Yes. Obviously, the United States, Chile, France, Turkey, and Singapore is the ones that I saw that are actually using it. The RAF has their own tanker, the Voyager, which is based on an Airbus design, so they don't use it. But these others have it in their inventory.
Not a British plane based on a British design, right?
No, I'm afraid not.
They're Airbus people over there.
That is correct. That's they like their Airbuses.
I can remember when I first became aware of some of these more exotic variants, the ones that are used for intelligence collection. Back in the early 80s, there was a shoot down 1983 of a Korean 707, which is very similar aircraft, sized and everything, and designed by Boeing as well, related aircraft that was shot down by the Soviet Union. This Korean aircraft was flying a commercial flight and was shot down by the Soviet Union, who incorrectly thought it was a spy plane. They thought it was an American spy intelligence gathering aircraft, and a horrible, tragic misunderstanding. Everybody on board was killed, over 200 people. And so, a sad mistaken identity case there. But I know that, again, there are some other aircraft. The reason that the Soviets may have misunderstood it was because there are aircraft of that size and of that layout that were used for intelligence gathering. Do you remember some of those, Dave?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got a couple of them here. The EC-135, which is the Looking Glass platform. It's an airborne command post. The NC-135, which was a test platform. Apparently, they used it for a lot of different testing situations. The OC-135, which is the Open Skies bird. That was for the Open Skies Treaty, where you would fly over Russia and make sure that they were disposing of the materials and planes that they were supposed to be getting rid of. And the Russians did the same thing. They would fly over the United States and confirm that we were doing the same thing. So that was the OC-135. The RC-135, which was the reconnaissance version. The WC-135, the Constant Phoenix. And this one's interesting because it's a nuclear sniffer. It flies around looking for nuclear residue in the atmosphere to determine if somebody has, exploded a nuclear bomb, and we want to know who's doing it and why they're doing it and what they're doing with it. So those are several. Now, here's the most interesting one that I found. This one is called the NKC-135R with the nickname Mr. Freeze. It's based at Edwards Air Force Base, and its job was to fly through Area 51, Groom Lake, or the Air Force Testing Center area, and it would perform icing tests on mystery aircraft that the Air Force had up. So literally the boom on that 135 was adapted to spray water onto a trailing aircraft to test the icing on the aircraft and how it would respond to icing. And it could also do a refueling as well. I assume they swapped booms out, or maybe they had the same boom that could do both jobs. I'm not entirely sure on that. I've got to do some more research. But that was something that I had never even heard of, that they spray water from a KC-135 onto an airplane trailing to test the icing capabilities of if it's Area 51, then obviously we're not seeing whatever it is they're spraying on.
Goodness. Well, it's funny because airmen are, proud of the missions that they serve. I wonder if there's some interesting mission patches that came out of that aircraft, nicknames that they might have had, or.
Yeah, that would be something to see on somebody's arm.
Well, one of the ones that I remember hearing about was called the Speckled Trout. Do you remember seeing anything about that plane?
No, I didn't come across that one.
The Speckled Trout was a 135 variant that was used for weather reconnaissance to begin with, but then it was overseas transportation for Air Force chiefs of staff. And so it wasn't a really exotic type of name, but it was kind of a mission or anything, but, certainly important. If you're an Air Force chief of staff, you want to ride in comfort and everything. And the crew took what they did very seriously, but actually worked with somebody who had a cousin who I believe he was a crew chief on the Speckled Trout. And he was telling me all about it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why do they call it that? And I was disappointed to see that it didn't have pictures, or it wasn't painted up like a shiny iridescent trout or anything like that, but apparently was named for a freckle-faced secretary whose last name was Trout. And so they called her the Speckled Trout, and she was in that office. So they honored her with that nickname. I don't know how she felt about it, but kind of a neat thing as well.
Yeah, that's news to me. I'll have to look that one up as well. Was not aware of it.
Trout, yep.
That's definitely an interesting one. Well, guys, jumping into closing statements here, starting with you, David Gorman.
Well, as always, I love the variety of aircraft we talk about. This is one that I'm used to seeing. I've lived in Knoxville since 1988 and was thrilled to realize, because when I moved here, I didn't realize we had this wing of aircraft at the airport. Was thrilled to realize that they're local. I look up every time. I watch them every time. Sometimes when I'm driving, I see one pass over and I'm like, okay, in about 3 seconds, his gear is going down. And his gear comes down, it's a routine thing. Having those big, long runways means lots of practice time for these guys. And, being able to look up and see them flying their missions, knowing that I've been on one of them before, it's a favorite. And, hats off to the guys that work so hard, and women, of course, who work so hard to keep aircraft in the air. This service is not glamorous, but boy, oh boy, it's essential. And they pump a lot. Besides gas, they pump a lot into the local economy. And, I know there are lots of kids that look up as well, and they're like, what is that? What is that? And, it's fun to see, fun to learn about. And it's one of my favorite things to see in the sky over Knoxville. So.
Well, and for me personally, I work at McGee Tyson Airport. I don't work for McGee Tyson Airport. I work for a rental car company there, but we're right there. I mean, I get to see everything coming in, everything coming out, and my area of the airport is blocked by the Hilton. You can't really see the runways or anything, but I can always hear the KC-135, and I know what's happening. So it's definitely a favorite around here. And even being around the Maryville, Alcoa area. You see them all. My drive home, I seen 2 just this afternoon. Closing statements for you, David Rowe.
Yeah, it's a wonderful bird. It's got a long life. So we've, it's been here longer than we have. And it'll stay here for a good while. The cruise, they just call it the tanker. It's simple. It does its job very well. It's capable. And, I was reading one of the airmen saying that, nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. And that pretty much says it all right there.
That is that's a great statement. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just saying they're proud of their job, and thank God they're up there doing it for us, because it keeps the mission moving along. You got to have it.
Definitely. Absolutely. 100%.
Salute to all you tanker crew people. We appreciate you. Thanks
Definitely.
for the show that you give us constantly in the skies over East Tennessee.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm going to close things up, guys. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you guys for joining us as always. So for Dave Gorman, David Rowe, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.